She sent him a message that morning that said, "Hey, can you ride me to the store?" That wink. That stupid little emoji. I still see it when I close my eyes. And the worst part? It was my dad she was texting. My girlfriend. The girl I've been with since 9th grade. Yeah. This story doesn't start normal, and it sure as hell doesn't end that way either. Let me rewind. We were both just kids when we met. 9th grade. She wore this gray hoodie every day like it was armor. I liked that. She didn't try hard to impress anyone. Didn't need to. I'd sit next to her during lunch, just to smell the peach gum she always chewed. Fast forward, we're 30 now, and you'd think all that time would mean something, right? You'd think. But I gotta admit, I was broken way before she ever touched me. And that's where this gets hard to talk about. Not just because it's twisted, but because I know how it sounds, like I'm blaming everyone else but me. I'm not. I swear I'm not. I'm just telling you what happened. When I was 14, my dad's girlfriend, she started doing things she shouldn't have. I didn't get it at first. She was always hanging around, touching my shoulder, whispering stuff too close to my ear. And then one night, when my dad was passed out on the couch and I was watching late-night TV, she sat next to me way too close, and that was it. That's how it started. It went on for months. I was barely in high school, didn't even know what the hell was happening to me. But she was older, confident. She made it seem normal. And not just that. She gave me stuff that made me feel less hollow, numbed everything. And I wanted that numbness. Then I met Mia. That was 10th grade. She had freckles across her nose like constellations, and the first time she laughed at something I said, I felt like someone had lit a match inside my chest. I cut things off with my dad's girlfriend. Cold turkey. Stopped going near her. Stopped answering her when she called my name. She didn't like that, but I didn't care. I had Mia now. But that guilt? It didn't go anywhere. It just sat inside me like a weight, like wet cement. When I turned 18, I finally told someone. My older brother, Rupert. We were sitting on the tailgate of his truck in the middle of nowhere, throwing empty soda cans into a ditch. I told him everything, how it started, how long it went on. He didn't say much, just looked off into the trees and said, "You gotta tell Dad." I didn't want to. God, I shouldn't have. He told him anyway. That's when everything exploded. My dad didn't even ask for my side. Said I seduced her. That it was all me. He threw me out. Banned me from the family land. Said I wasn't welcome around my brothers. He stayed with her for 3 more years. Like I was the poison. Mia tried to be there for me through all that, and I guess I leaned on her way too hard. She became the only stable thing in my life. We moved in together when I was 20, and I thought maybe this was how I'd fix myself. Through her. With her. But people like me, we rot from the inside out. No matter who loves us. When I was 23, we planned a trip to Florida. Just a break. Sun, water, quiet. Mia's younger sister wanted to come. 19, wild, and impulsive like Mia used to be before everything got heavy between us. I didn't think much of it. Then, somewhere during the drive, the conversation got weird. Someone, I don't even remember who, made a joke about the 3 of us hooking up. It was supposed to be a joke. But Mia, she didn't laugh. She looked at me and said, "Maybe we should, just once. You know, spice things up." I laughed it off. I thought she was being sarcastic. She wasn't. And in Florida, it happened. I won't go into every detail, but it wasn't a full-on thing. Still, lines were crossed. Her idea. Her push. But something changed in her eyes right after. Like watching a spark turn into a wildfire and realizing too late that you dropped the match. When we got home, she unraveled. Said she felt like I didn't care about her anymore. Said I must have been thinking about her sister the whole time. She was spiraling, and I just stood there with my mouth open, trying to figure out if I was the villain or the victim. We took a break. At least that's what we called it. But during that break, I didn't stay clean. I kept seeing her sister. Yeah. I know what that makes me. That was around the time things with my dad started to thaw. Not fully, just little cracks. A few phone calls. An offer to stay in one of his rental trailers on the land again. I took it. I shouldn't have, but I was tired of sleeping on couches and in my car. Meanwhile, Mia, She was hurting, and she needed someone. So who does she turn to? My dad. The man who called me a liar. Who said I corrupted his girlfriend at 14. The man who threw me away. At first, I thought it was harmless. Just two broken people sitting in the ashes of what I burned. Then I started seeing things. Not just little things. Patterns. Every morning, like clockwork, he'd show up around 7:30. She'd answer the door with her hair still wet, which she never used to do. He'd stay just long enough for me to wonder. Long enough for my gut to turn into a fist. So I set up cameras. And what I caught, that's when the world really started to slide sideways. He started showing up before the sun even fully cleared the trees. Same time every day, like it was a job. Parked in the same spot, knocked the same way, walked in like he owned the place. She'd open the door in that same pale blue robe, the one she never wore around me. And then they'd disappear into the part of the house I didn't have cameras on. An hour and a half later, he'd walk out. Sunglasses on. Smug little grin tucked under his beard like he just got away with something. And maybe he had. I tried to tell myself I was paranoid. Told myself it was trauma, making me see things that weren't there. But the footage didn't lie. It wasn't some wild theory. It was movement, routine, intimacy disguised as errands and just dropping by. And it wasn't just the visits. It was the texts. I'd seen them accidentally at first. Her phone lit up on the kitchen counter and I glanced. Just a name. That's all it said. Then she left it unlocked one day when she went to take a shower, and I opened it. My hands were shaking before I even read a single word. Hey, you looked real good today. I miss your face. I love you so much. There were selfies. Close-up, soft lighting, lip gloss. Not the kind of photos you send to someone who's just your boyfriend's dad. I scrolled further. There it was, the message that broke my spine in half. Next time, let's not wait for him to leave. I didn't breathe for a full minute. Just stood there in the kitchen with that hollow roar in my ears like I'd been smacked underwater. Later that night, I asked her straight up, calm voice, cold hands, "Why are you sending my dad selfies?" She froze, didn't even try to fake confusion, just turned away and said, "He's like a father figure to me. You know that." I laughed. I actually laughed. Sounded sharp, wrong. Right? I said. Because most girls send flirty selfies to their boyfriend's dad and call it bonding. She didn't answer. Just walked into the bedroom and shut the door. Locked it. That became the new rhythm. I'd bring it up. She'd deflect, walk away, lock a door, disappear. Meanwhile, the camera footage kept piling up. He'd leave my place and 10 minutes later she'd drive up to his house. Then not come back until 15 minutes before I got off work. One day he asked her to ride with him to pick up a new Harley. Brand new. He dropped $45,000 on it like it was nothing. I said I wanted to come too. They both looked surprised, like I'd caught them doing something wrong. Her smile faltered. His eyes narrowed for half a second, just long enough for me to feel it. We drove in two cars, him and her in mine, me on his new Harley. At a red light, he put the kickstand down, walked back to the car, opened the door where I was sitting and said, "You take the bike the rest of the way." He never let me near his old bike. Not once. That thing was worth maybe $3,000 and he treated it like sacred relic. Now he was tossing me the keys to a brand new Harley without blinking. I knew what it was. He wanted to be alone with her in the car. My car. I rode in front. Checked my mirrors. They stayed just out of sight, always too far back for me to see clearly. When I slowed down, they slowed more. When I sped up, they stayed behind. I didn't need a camera to know what was happening. I could feel it, like someone hammering a nail into the softest part of my chest. After that, it wasn't just suspicion. It was knowledge, the kind that poisons you from the inside out. But it didn't stop there. Her car broke down a week later. Suddenly, my dad, the man who wouldn't speak to me for half a decade, was loaning her his spare vehicle. Not just that, he was giving her money, fuel, groceries, fixes. Whatever she needed, he had it. And I was just supposed to pretend none of this was weird? They were inseparable. She'd come home reeking of his cologne. She started quoting things he said in conversation, not just once but constantly, like he'd become her new inner voice. and I kept my mouth shut longer than I should have, trying to convince myself that I was imagining it, that I was damaged goods who couldn't trust anyone, even the girl I'd spent more than a decade with. But the moment he stopped talking to me again, cold, silent, wouldn't even look me in the eyes when we crossed paths, that's when it clicked. They'd gone too far, and he couldn't look at me because he knew it. He couldn't face what he'd done. And she wouldn't admit anything, not even when I showed her the messages, not even when I told her about the camera logs. She just stood there with her arms crossed, refusing to meet my eyes, like I was the one who needed to explain myself. A few weeks later, everything started falling apart for them. I guess she met someone new, another guy, younger, probably less baggage. When my dad found out, he snapped, took the car back, cut her off, started picking fights with me again for no reason. I remember the day I came home and found her crying on the porch. She said we were being evicted, that my dad had come by while I was at work and told her to pack up and get out. Her, not me. I was the one on the lease. I was the one paying the rent. But he told her we were out. That was the nail in the coffin. I found us a new place, took her with me. But some days, I wish I hadn't. Because now I live with someone I can't stop looking at like a puzzle missing pieces. Every time she walks out of the room, I wonder if it's because she's hiding something, or because she's tired of pretending there's nothing to hide. Sometimes I ask her, softly, calmly, desperately, did anything happen between you two? She never answers, just closes the door. I started waking up in the middle of the night, sweating, heart pounding like I was running from something I couldn't see. I'd roll over, look at her sleeping face, and feel this cold, acidic wave of doubt pour down my spine. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. My memories were all mixed up, twisted with what I thought I knew, what I saw, and what I felt. And what I felt was betrayal, not just from her. From him, from both of them. I think what got me the most wasn't the suspicion or even the silence. It was the gaslighting, that subtle rewriting of reality. The way she'd raise her eyebrows and say things like, "You're making yourself crazy," or, "You really think I'd do that with your father?" Your father. She made me feel insane. And when you hear something enough, you start to believe it. I started wondering, maybe it was me. Maybe my past had warped the way I saw people. I mean, who does what I did? Who gets involved with their dad's partner as a kid and then walks away clean? Maybe I deserved all of it. Maybe this was just life balancing the scale. But then I'd remember the way she'd light up when his name came up in conversation. The private smiles. The way she'd blush and brush it off, like she had some inside joke with him I wasn't part of. It was always just slightly off. Like watching two people pretend they don't know each other in public when you know they've got history. And it wasn't just in my head. I showed Rupert, my brother, some of the messages. The ones I screenshotted before she changed her lock screen and deleted everything. He didn't say much, just looked down at the phone, then at me and said, "You gotta get out, man." But I couldn't. I don't know why. It's like when you've lived in a place so long, even if the ceiling's caved in and the floor's rotting, you can't walk away because it's home. And if you leave, then you're nobody. No past. No proof you ever mattered to anyone. So instead, I stayed. Pretended we were okay. Cooked dinner like we were still a couple. Made her coffee in the morning. She'd say thanks and flash that same smile she gave me in 9th grade. And for a second I'd think, maybe it's fine. Maybe we are okay. But then I'd catch her staring at her phone too long. Or texting someone late at night. Or leaving the room when a message popped up. All that silence between us felt like the static you hear before a storm hits. Heavy, humming, dangerous. One day I asked her again, just straight up, "Tell me the truth. You and him. Did anything happen?" She didn't even pause this time. Just looked at me, eyes glassy and tired, and said, "You really think I'm that disgusting?" And I didn't say anything, because I didn't know anymore. A week later, I went to grab something out of the shed behind the house. Hadn't been in there for months. As I was moving boxes, I found one I didn't recognize. Unlabeled, taped shut but not sealed. Inside were old receipts, wrappers, little things. But wedged between a couple envelopes was a folded piece of notebook paper. It was in her handwriting. I shouldn't have read it, but I did. It was a note she wrote to him. My father. A damn letter. You always made me feel more seen than he ever did. Even when I knew it was wrong, I couldn't stop. I miss our mornings. I miss how you looked at me like I mattered. My knees buckled. I sat down right there in the dirt. Everything in me just went quiet, like a TV that lost signal. Just that flat, gray snow behind my eyes. She didn't just sleep with someone else. She slept with the one man who'd already ruined my life once. And she chose him, over and over. I didn't confront her that night. Couldn't. I just walked back into the house and made dinner like nothing had changed. She didn't notice anything different. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. We ate. She talked about some show she was watching. I nodded along, chewing through the taste of betrayal like it was steak. I thought about leaving again that night, just packing a bag, walking out, letting it all burn behind me. But something inside me said no, not yet. That night I barely slept, just laid there, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above our bed like it was ticking off every second I'd wasted on her. On him. On us. I could hear her breathing beside me, steady, even, like she hadn't torched my whole life and then laid down in the ashes without blinking. I stared at the dark long enough for the outlines of the room to blur into shadows. And somewhere in that silence, I decided I wasn't going to ask again. Not ever. No more begging for answers. No more catching her in lies she refused to admit. I was done asking. Now I just wanted to know. So I started watching her. Every move, every flinch, every glance at her phone, every long shower, every time she stepped outside to get air. I started recording. Not because I planned to show anyone. I didn't care what people thought. I just needed the truth for me. The kind that didn't come with shrugs and tears and manipulative little deflections. I moved the cameras inside. One in the living room, one in the kitchen. I didn't feel proud doing it. I felt sick. But I needed to see her when she didn't know I was watching. Because maybe then I'd finally see the real her. The one I used to love. Or the one I'd been blind to all along. And what I saw. She smiled when she read his messages. Her whole face would soften. Not the fake, forced smile she gave me when I brought her coffee or asked how her day was. No, this was different. This was real. Like someone had whispered the one thing she'd been dying to hear all day. One morning while I was at work, I checked the live feed. He was at the house again. She opened the door in that same damn robe. I watched them talk in the kitchen for a full 5 minutes. He leaned in close and she didn't step back. They were laughing. He brushed something off her shoulder. Something that wasn't even there. And she just stood there, blinking slow like she was trying to hold on to the moment. I knew that look. I'd seen it 100 times. On our first date. The first time I told her I loved her. Now she was giving it to him. That was the first time I punched a hole in the wall. She asked what happened when she got home, but I just stared at the drywall and said nothing. I started looking at her differently after that. Not like a girlfriend. Not like someone I needed to forgive. I looked at her like a stranger. Like someone who'd moved into the body of the person I used to know. Her voice still sounded like Mia. She still had that scar on her chin from the time we went hiking and she fell trying to race me down the hill. But the person behind her eyes? Gone. She started getting cold, too. Passive-aggressive. Snapping at nothing. If I asked where she went, she'd say, out. If I asked who she was texting, she'd say, why do you care? It was like living with a roommate I secretly hated. And I think she hated me too. Not because of anything new, but because I reminded her of what she'd done. I was the mirror she couldn't cover up. One afternoon I came home early. Just walked in without calling. She was sitting on the couch with her laptop open, headphones in. Didn't hear me at first. I stood in the doorway watching her. She was smiling. Not like the fake one. That real one. The one she only used for him. She must have been on a video call. I stepped forward and she flinched when she noticed me. Like I'd caught her with her hand in a drawer full of knives. Who were you talking to? I asked. She closed the laptop so fast it snapped. No one. I nodded. Sat on the arm of the couch and stared at her until she got up and walked to the bathroom. Locked the door. I wanted to ask her. Was it him? Were they still talking? Still doing whatever the hell it was they did behind my back while pretending to be family? But I didn't. Instead, I waited till she left for the grocery store, and I checked her computer. It was password protected now. She'd never done that before. And that's when I realized I didn't need to find proof anymore. I didn't need screenshots or camera footage or half-written letters stuffed in boxes. I already knew. She had chosen him. And not in a moment of weakness. Not in a single night of regret. She chose him every day with every message, every lie, every secret drive up to his house when she thought I wouldn't notice. And he chose her, too. He chose her over the truth. Over me. Over blood. All of it, every second of it burned through me like acid. And still I stayed. Because walking away meant admitting it was all real. There was a morning I still can't forget. And not because anything dramatic happened. That's the thing. It was too normal. She was standing at the stove making eggs, humming softly to herself, wearing one of my old t-shirts like she used to when we were 19 and couldn't afford heat in the winter. The window was open, the pan was sizzling, and for a split second, I caught myself thinking, maybe we'll be okay. But then I noticed something. She was wearing the necklace my dad gave her. She didn't know I knew about it. I'd seen the receipt tucked inside his glove box one day, sterling silver, tiny heart pendant. The kind of thing a teenage boy buys for his high school sweetheart. Except my dad was 60, and it wasn't even close to her birthday. I asked her about it once weeks ago. She said it was just something she bought online. And yet there it was, hanging against my t-shirt like a trophy from another man's war. I stared at it while she scraped eggs onto 2 plates and said, "You want hot sauce?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. My throat felt tight. She looked up at me, and maybe she saw something in my face, because her smile disappeared like a light getting snuffed out. "What?" she asked. I shook my head, picked up my plate, took it to the couch and ate in silence. That was our new routine. Quiet mornings filled with lies so loud I could barely hear myself think. Every shared meal felt like swallowing broken glass. Every night in the same bed was a punishment. I stopped touching her. Not out of revenge. Not even out of anger. I just couldn't bring myself to act like she was mine anymore. One night, I heard her crying in the bathroom. Soft, quiet. That kind of crying where someone's trying to be strong but they're losing the fight. For a second, I felt that old pull. The part of me that still loved her, the part that wanted to go knock on the door and ask if she was okay, hold her, pretend we were still the kids who shared milkshakes and wrote each other notes in math class. But I stayed in bed. Because I wasn't that kid anymore. And she wasn't the girl I wrote those notes for. Later that week, I ran into my dad in town. It was the first time we'd spoken in almost 2 months. He acted like nothing was wrong. Asked how work was going, asked about the trailer. Made small talk like he hadn't helped torch my entire relationship. I kept my face still. Just nodded, said everything was fine. Then, right before he turned to leave, he said something that made my stomach twist. "Tell Mia I said hi." He said it with a grin. Not playful. Not casual. Calculated. Like he wanted me to know. I didn't say anything. Just watched him walk away. That night, I came home to find her sitting at the kitchen table with 2 glasses of wine. One was half full. The other hadn't been touched. She looked surprised to see me. "I thought you were working late," she said quickly. "I wasn't supposed to be home yet." I looked at the glasses, then at her. She followed my eyes, then stood up too fast and said, "It was just me." There was lipstick on both rims. That was the last time I tried to play it cool. I walked past her right to the bedroom, grabbed my laptop, pulled up the camera feed from that afternoon. There he was, my dad, in the kitchen, sitting where I sit, laughing, leaning close. Her hand was on his wrist. She never touched my wrist like that. I walked back out and put the laptop on the table in front of her. Pressed play. She didn't blink. Just watched. Quiet. When the clip ended, she reached for the wine and said, "So what do you want me to say?" I stared at her. Really stared. And for the first time in months, I said what I'd been thinking since all of this started. "I want you to leave." Her face cracked. Not anger. Not even sadness. Fear. She stood up like her knees didn't work anymore. looked around like she didn't know what to take with her, like she wasn't sure where home even was anymore. I went back to the bedroom, shut the door. She didn't leave that night. She didn't even pack a bag. She just sat in the living room, curled up on the couch as still as a statue. Like if she didn't move, none of it would be real. But it was. And I had finally stopped pretending otherwise. The next morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet. No music playing from her phone, no water running, no smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. I stepped out of the bedroom expecting her to be gone. Maybe I even hoped she was. But she was still there, sitting on the edge of the couch like she hadn't moved all night. She looked up at me like she was about to say something, but I walked right past her and grabbed my keys off the hook. She flinched like I'd raised my voice, but I hadn't said a word. I drove around for hours that day, aimless. Ended up in front of the old gas station where we used to hang out after school. We'd sit on the curb eating slushies, talking about how we'd leave town someday, get a place near the mountains, raise dogs, not kids, be happy. Now I couldn't even look at her without feeling like there was glass in my chest. When I finally came home, her things were gone. Not all of them, just the obvious ones. Clothes, makeup, her charger, that necklace she swore she'd bought online. She didn't leave a note. Not that I needed one. The silence felt like a relief. Until it didn't. The second night alone, I stood in the kitchen with both our coffee mugs in my hands. Stared at hers like it might explain something if I just looked long enough. I put it back on the shelf, then took it down again. It didn't feel right to leave it there. Didn't feel right to throw it away either. I ended up stuffing it in a drawer. A week passed. Then two. She didn't call. Didn't text. I figured she'd probably gone back to him. Or maybe she'd moved in with the new guy she was sneaking off to see during their falling out. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. I told myself that every day. But here's the thing about lies you repeat to yourself enough times. They don't make the pain go away, they just bury it deeper. I started walking around the house at night, turning on lights in empty rooms, checking the locks 3 or 4 times before bed. I don't know what I was looking for. Closure? Answers? Ghosts, maybe. One night, I found myself back in the shed. Same box. Same letter. But this time, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Tucked into the back of the box was a folded receipt from a motel out near the highway. Date matched one of the days I had been out of town for work. A weekday. Mid-morning check-in, 2 guests. The signature on the bottom wasn't hers. It was his. I drove there the next day. Sat in the parking lot for almost an hour before I worked up the nerve to go in. I didn't ask anything. Just stared at the front desk clerk until he recognized the name and nodded slowly. Yeah, he said. I remember them. Always paid cash. Kept the curtains closed. I didn't say a word. Just turned around and walked back out into the heat, sat in my car, and gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles cracked. That was the moment I finally let it sink in. It wasn't a maybe. Wasn't a hunch. It was real. They had been together. Behind my back. Under my nose. In my car. In my house. In some cheap motel off a 2-lane road while I was busting my ass to keep a roof over our heads. She slept with my father. And she'd never said a word. I drove home on autopilot. Didn't even remember the ride. Just blinked and I was back in the driveway, staring at the dead flowers on the porch. The ones she used to water every morning before I woke up. They'd all turned brown. I didn't go inside right away. Just sat there in the heat. Engine off, windows rolled down. Sweat clinging to my neck like regret. And then I saw it. Something sitting on the front step. A small envelope. No name. Just sealed. I picked it up like it might bite me. Took it inside. Opened it on the kitchen counter. Inside was a note. Short. Handwritten. Her handwriting. You were right. I never meant for it to happen. But I guess that doesn't matter now. I'm sorry. That was it. No details. No confessions. No real apology. Just enough to confirm what I already knew. I sat down on the kitchen floor and just stared at the words. Reread them a dozen times like maybe the meaning would change if I looked at it hard enough. But it didn't. After that note, I thought I'd feel something shift. Some release. Like the weight I'd been dragging for months would finally lift off my back now that the truth was out in the open. But that didn't happen. The truth didn't free me. It nailed me to the floor. I kept playing it over and over in my head. The mornings she'd come out of the shower, smiling, damp hair, skin warm from the steam. The way she'd wrap her arms around me and press her face into my chest like she couldn't get close enough. And all I could think now was she with him that same morning? Did she come from his hands to mine and smile like nothing happened? That thought stuck to me like grease under my fingernails. No matter how hard I tried to scrub it out, it stayed. And my dad? He still wouldn't look at me, wouldn't say a word, acted like I didn't exist, like he was the one who'd been betrayed. I stopped showing up to family stuff. Missed birthdays, barbecues, whatever gatherings they threw. Rupert kept inviting me, kept texting, saying, "Don't let him win by disappearing." But I wasn't disappearing. I was removing myself, because every time I saw my dad's face, I saw her hands on it. Eventually, Rupert got tired of trying. And just like that, my family thinned out to a memory. I spent a lot of days alone after that. Even work felt different. I stopped caring, showed up late, left early, took long breaks in the supply room where no one could see me unraveling. I didn't talk to anyone, not because I didn't have things to say, but because the things I wanted to say would rot in the air before they left my throat. What could I even tell people? Yeah, my girlfriend of 15 years left me for my dad. Also, I had a messed up thing happen with his girlfriend when I was a kid, and he blamed me for it. No big deal. There's no space in polite conversation for that kind of truth. So I kept it in. That's when the dreams started. Not nightmares, exactly. More like flashbacks twisted into something worse. I'd wake up thinking I was back in that trailer, hearing my dad's truck pull up outside, the creak of the front door, her laugh echoing down the hallway. Some nights I'd dream I walked in on them, not just talking, not just kissing, everything. But the worst part wasn't seeing it. It was the look she gave me when she saw me standing there. No guilt, no panic, just a slow, sad smile, like she always knew it would come to this. One morning I woke up on the living room floor. I don't even remember lying down. Just opened my eyes and saw the ceiling fan spinning above me, same as the night she left. Something in me cracked that day. I didn't cry, didn't scream, just stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stared at the window above the sink. Outside, the lawn was overgrown. The swing set across the street squeaked in the wind. Life was still happening. But mine felt like it had ended 3 exits back and no one noticed. I picked up my phone and opened our old messages. They were still there. Every "I love you," every emoji, every mundane little exchange like, "Do we need milk?" and "What time are you off work?" I scrolled all the way up, back to the very first message she ever sent me. "Hey, I think I left my hoodie in your locker. Can I come get it?" I remember how fast my heart beat when I got that text, like she was giving me a reason to talk to her. I'd worn that hoodie for 3 days before she asked for it back. I never told her that. I deleted the whole thread. Sat there with my thumb, hovering over the screen for a long time before pressing yes. Confirm. Gone. Felt like throwing a part of myself into a black hole. But it had to be done. It was mid-January when I heard from him again. Cold, damp, gray, the kind of day that presses on your chest like a wet towel. I was driving home from work, halfway through a podcast I wasn't really listening to, when my phone buzzed. A message. From him. "You around?" That's all it said. No hello. No context. Just those 2 words, like we were old buddies picking up where we left off. I didn't answer. I kept driving, but my knuckles tightened on the wheel. My stomach went sour. I hadn't heard a word from him since the motel, since the note, since I found out for sure. He hadn't even tried to deny it, just ghosted like a coward, left me to stew in the wreckage he helped create. And now he wanted to, what? Catch up? I told myself I wouldn't respond, that he could rot in whatever world he lived in now, the one where sleeping with your son's partner didn't earn you a lifetime of silence. But a few hours later, another text came. Need to talk. Not about her. That stopped me. I sat there at the kitchen table, lights off, his words glowing in the dark. Not about her. So why now? Why break the silence unless something was wrong? I waited almost an hour. Then I typed, "What do you want?" A few minutes passed. Then came the reply, "Meet me, please." That word, please, hit different. My dad doesn't say please. My dad orders. He controls. He pushes. He manipulates. But he doesn't ask. So I agreed. We met at this old diner off the highway. The kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and a waitress who's been there since the 90s. I sat in the corner with my back to the wall, watching every car that pulled in. When he walked through the door, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked older, not tired, aged, like something had been gnawing at him from the inside out. He sat down across from me, didn't even bother ordering coffee, just leaned back and stared at the table like it held answers. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then he said, "She's gone." I didn't respond. I figured it was a play, a sympathy card. He'd say it like it mattered, like it changed anything. But then he said something else. "She left town, took some of my stuff, didn't say goodbye." I stared at him, and he didn't flinch, just nodded slowly like he expected that. "I just thought you should know," he said. "She told me. She never loved either of us." That part landed. Because even though I hated him, even though I wanted nothing to do with him, hearing that still dug under my skin. Neither of us. It made me realize something I hadn't let myself feel before. I wasn't special in the betrayal. I was just one of two idiots she played like instruments. "You dragged me into that mess," I said quietly. "You knew what it would do to me." He looked up at me, eyes glassy but dry. "I blamed you for what happened with her. Your mom, my ex. All of it. I've been blaming you since you were 14 because it's easier than blaming myself." Silence. I stared at him. My throat was dry. There were things I wanted to scream, but my mouth wouldn't move. "I hated you," I finally said. "I hated myself more. But you were supposed to protect me. And instead," I couldn't even finish it. He just nodded again. "I know." There was a moment where I thought, maybe this was it. Maybe we were about to hit some turning point, rebuild something. But then he said the thing that shattered that illusion completely. "She said you weren't enough. That's why she came to me." My stomach twisted. He looked me dead in the eyes, not with malice, but with that same sick honesty that destroys more than it heals. "I didn't come here to make peace," he said. "I just didn't want you thinking she was ever really yours." And then he stood up, dropped a 20 on the table, walked out. I sat there long after he left, long after the waitress came by and asked if I needed anything else. I didn't move, couldn't, because that wasn't closure. That was a funeral. Not for her, not for him, for the me that still thought love meant anything in our world. I didn't go home after the diner. Couldn't. Instead, I drove. Not to anywhere specific, just far enough that the road signs stopped feeling familiar. It was almost midnight when I pulled into a gas station and just sat there. Engine running, heat barely pushing through the vents, headlights painting the concrete in that pale yellow that makes everything look more hollow than it is. I remember gripping the steering wheel like I was trying to keep myself from coming apart. My hands were shaking, not from cold, from everything else. I kept thinking about his words. "You weren't enough. She never loved either of us. I didn't come to make peace." He'd meant for that to break me, and it did, but not in the way he thought. He wanted to win, to humiliate me, but what he didn't realize was that I was already gone. I'd been drifting for months. Years, probably. I wasn't looking for peace. I wasn't even looking for closure anymore. I just wanted it to stop. The pressure, the memories, the noise in my head that never shut off. Every memory now felt poisoned, even the good ones, like she'd somehow infected the whole timeline, like nothing I lived had ever been real. You want to know something pathetic? That night, I went through the photos on my phone, the ones I couldn't bring myself to delete. There was one of her and me at the beach. She was wearing this stupid, oversized sun hat, grinning with her nose all sunburned, and I remember taking that picture thinking, this is the kind of moment people stay alive for. Now I couldn't even look at it without feeling like a fool. I slept in the car that night, didn't even recline the seat, just tilted my head back and let the numbness settle in. And when the sun came up, I didn't feel any better, just more hollow. But I knew one thing, I couldn't keep doing this. So I made a list, not a dramatic one, not some emotional diary dump, just a plain list, 3 columns. Keep, remove, change. Under keep, I wrote, work, truck, tools, 1 photo of mom. Under remove, I wrote, everything with her, everything from the trailer, every number I hadn't called in 6 months. Under change, I wrote, where I live, my phone number, my last name. I wrote it, then scratched it out, then wrote it again. I stared at that list for a long time. It wasn't a solution. It wasn't healing. But it was a direction, something to move toward. And that's how it started. I moved out of the house a week later, took what little I needed, left the rest. The landlord asked me why I was bailing mid-lease. I said, long story. He nodded like he didn't want to hear it anyway. I got a small place across town. Nothing fancy. Just 4 walls, a door that locked, and windows that didn't look out at his driveway or the hill where she used to drive up at night. I didn't tell anyone where I went. Not Rupert. Not old friends. I didn't want to be found. I wanted to disappear in plain sight. That first night in the new place was the first time I'd felt even close to peace in over a year. Until around 2 a.m. That's when I woke up to the sound of a car idling outside. At first I thought it was just a neighbor. But then the lights shut off. And stayed off. I crept to the window. Pulled the curtain back just enough to see. It was a black SUV. Parked across the street. Engine off now, no movement. I waited. 10 minutes. Nothing. 15. Then it pulled away. No big deal, right? Except it happened again the next night. And the next. Every time around 2 a.m. Every time it just sat there. No one got out. No one knocked. Just the car. Sitting. Watching. I started taking pictures of it. Got the plates. Ran them through an old friend who owed me a favor. Guess whose name it came back to? My dad's. I wish I could say I was surprised when his name came up. But deep down I wasn't. What shocked me was how calm I felt. No outburst. No panic. Just this dull, crawling realization that he wasn't finished with me. That whatever lines he'd already crossed, they weren't the end. They were the beginning. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the photo of that SUV. My thumb pressed so hard against the screen it left a smudge. He wanted me to see it. That much was obvious. It wasn't just surveillance. It was performance. A reminder that he was still out there. That he still had reach. That he still controlled the tempo of this whole rotten symphony. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day I changed my number. Got blackout curtains. Installed a new lock even though the old one worked fine. And I stopped going out after dark. A week passed. No car. No messages. Then one afternoon I got a letter. No return address. Just my name, written in all caps like it had been punched into the envelope. I stood in the hallway of my building staring at it. Part of me tempted to toss it into the trash unopened. But I took it inside. Sat at the kitchen table. Opened it with a steak knife. Inside, 1 photograph. No words. No explanation. Just a picture of me. Standing at the gas station where I'd slept in my truck weeks earlier. It was grainy. Off-center. But there was no mistaking it. My posture, my jacket. The way I was slouched against the driver's side door. He'd been there. Watching. Not just parked outside my new place. Following me. Tracking me. And for what? What more could he possibly want? I tried to tell myself he was just trying to rattle me. That this was all about control, not violence. That he was too much of a coward to ever lay a hand on me. But that night, when I turned out the lights, I slept with a hammer next to my bed. Just in case. You think you know paranoia until your own father starts lurking in the shadows of your life like a ghost that never left the room. You start hearing things. Creaks in the hallway. Footsteps that sound too deliberate. Doors that feel lighter than you left them. You doubt your own memory. You check the locks twice, 3 times, again at 3 a.m. because something feels off. I stopped answering the door altogether. Didn't matter who it was. Delivery. Leave it. Neighbor? Not my problem. Police? Not without a warrant. Because the truth is, once someone invades your mind, your space, your sense of reality, there's no switch to flip it off. You live inside a constant loop of what if. And then, it escalated. One morning, I stepped outside to go to work, and I found it, a bouquet of flowers, sitting on my hood. Cheap, gas station roses, wilted around the edges. Wrapped in newspaper. No card. Nothing romantic about it. It was taunting, mocking, a callback to the old Mia days, when she'd leave flowers after fights to soften the blow. But this wasn't from her. This was him, borrowing her language, twisting it into something ugly. I threw the bouquet in the dumpster, slammed the lid. That's when I decided this wasn't going to be another slow unraveling. I wasn't going to let him drag me back down with these sick little mind games. So I went to confront him. For the last time. He wasn't at home when I got there. I pulled into the long gravel driveway, past the rusted-out shed and the old swing set that had been leaning sideways since the storm 2 years back. His house was just like I remembered. The siding still cracked near the porch light, one shutter missing on the left window, the gutter hanging like a loose tooth. Nothing changed. It looked abandoned, forgotten, but I knew better. I parked by the woodpile and killed the engine. Sat there with my hands on my knees, watching the front door, waiting for any movement. The wind rattled the trees, and somewhere a screen door slammed, probably next door. Still, I waited, and waited. Eventually, I got out, walked up the steps, knocked once, then twice. No answer. I checked the driveway again. His SUV wasn't there. But that didn't mean he wasn't inside. I knocked harder. Still nothing. So I walked around to the back, past the broken grill and the old plastic kiddie pool that hadn't seen water in years. The back door was cracked. Just barely. Like it didn't latch right. I called out, "Dad!" No answer. Something in my gut pulled tight, not fear exactly, but a tension like the kind you get before a storm rolls in. Thick air. Static in the throat. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house smelled the same. Stale beer, burnt coffee, and something musty, like old newspapers left in the rain. The living room was dark, blinds half closed, TV flickering on mute, a table full of empty cans and 2 ashtrays overflowing with butts. But no sign of him. I checked the kitchen, then the hallway. Then I saw it. The door to his bedroom, cracked open just like the one outside. I paused there, just stared at that gap in the door, breathing through my nose, heart thumping like a drum under wet cloth. I didn't even know what I was going to say when I found him. I just knew I had to look him in the face. Had to see whatever sick satisfaction he'd been getting out of haunting me. I pushed the door open. He wasn't there, but someone had been. The room was trashed. Drawers pulled out, clothes scattered across the floor, pictures flipped face down on the dresser. And on the bed, laid out like a twisted exhibit, was a shirt. One of mine. One I hadn't worn in months. I recognized it instantly. Gray hoodie, frayed sleeve. I'd lost it during the move. Thought maybe I left it behind at the old house or dropped it at work. But here it was, on his bed, laid out like it meant something. Next to it, a photo. Me and Mia. From years ago. One of those goofy mall photo booth shots we took when we were 17. Her in that ridiculous leopard print jacket, me with braces and acne. We were laughing in the photo, her hand over her mouth, like she just said something wild. And written across the bottom of it, in black Sharpie, were 5 words. She smiled for me too. I dropped the photo like it burned my fingers. My skin went cold. My stomach flipped. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about me. About control. About digging under my skin until I lost myself completely. He wanted me broken, spiraling, paranoid. And worse, it was working. I grabbed the photo and left the room, heart-hammering, vision tunneling. I didn't even lock the back door on the way out. Just got in my truck and drove. I don't remember most of that drive. I remember the road blurring, the sun low in the sky, the buzzing in my ears like someone whispering from the passenger seat. When I got home, I checked every lock, every camera, sat in the dark with the TV off, just waiting, listening. Couldn't prove it, but I knew he'd been inside my place before. After. Maybe while I was sleeping. He had the hoodie. He had the photo. He had time. He was trying to push me somewhere. Some edge. And I was getting closer to it. I waited 3 nights. 3 long, crawling nights where every sound made me flinch and every passing car had me peeking through the blinds like I was trapped in some kind of slow-motion horror. I didn't sleep, not really. Just lay there with my eyes wide, counting every tick of the clock, heart climbing into my throat every time I thought I heard the front doorknob move. And then I saw him. 2:07 a.m. Same SUV. Same slow crawl past my place. But this time he didn't stop across the street. He pulled into my driveway, headlights off, rolled up like a shadow with wheels. No urgency, no fear. I was already at the window when it happened. Barefoot, hoodie on, phone in my hand, thumb hovering over the record button. But I didn't press it. I just watched. The door cracked open. He stepped out. No jacket. Just that old denim shirt he always wore, the one with the frayed collar. He looked up at my window and didn't even flinch. Then he walked around the side of the house, disappeared into the dark. No knock, no announcement, just gone. I stood there frozen. Every instinct said, call someone, call the police, call anyone. But I didn't, because something inside me had already decided. I went to the kitchen, opened the drawer, and took out the tire iron I kept under the sink. Not a weapon, just insurance. The kind of thing you keep around in case the world tilts sideways and reason stops working. And that night, the world was sideways as hell. I slipped out the back door barefoot, breath fogging the air, tire iron heavy in my hand. The cold hit me like a slap. Not that it mattered. I couldn't feel anything but the rush of blood in my ears. The yard was dead quiet. No footsteps, no creaking boards, just moonlight and breath and waiting. I moved slow, checked the side gate. Nothing. Then I saw it, his shadow stretching along the fence line near the shed. He was in my yard. He hadn't knocked. He hadn't spoken. He was just there. I stepped into the light and said his name. Loud, sharp, unmistakable. Dad. He turned and smiled. Not a warm smile. Not a nervous one. Triumphant. Like he'd won something. Thought you might come out, he said, voice calm, almost friendly. Like we were just catching up. I just wanted to see how you were doing. I stepped closer. Grip tightening. Get off my property. He held up both hands like he was innocent. Relax. I wasn't gonna come in. I was just checking on you. He looked around, eyes moving slowly over the yard, the house, the shed. Like he was taking inventory of everything I'd built without him. And then he said it. You always were good at making something out of nothing. That was a shot. He knew it. I knew it. Because that's what he used to say when I fixed things around the trailer as a kid. When I patched up holes in the drywall or made dinner from scraps. It was never a compliment. It was a reminder that I didn't have enough. I'm not a kid anymore, I said. You don't get to come here and pull this creepy garbage. He took a step forward. I raised the tire iron without thinking. I swear to God. Take one more step. He stopped, just smiled again. I was just leaving, he said. I left something by the back door. Thought you'd want it. And then he turned and walked back toward the SUV like none of it mattered. Calm. Like he hadn't just broken into my life again and expected a thank you. When I finally stepped around to the back door, I saw it. Another envelope. Taped to the glass. Same handwriting. My name in all caps. But inside, not a note. Just a single flash drive. No label. No writing. Just plastic and silence. I didn't open it right away. I set the flash drive on the counter like it was made of glass. Like it could shatter or explode with one wrong move. Every part of me screamed, don't watch it. Don't let him in again. Don't play his game. But of course I did. Because people like me, the ones who've been lied to, twisted up, pushed so far we barely recognize our own faces in the mirror, we always want the truth. Even when we know it's going to wreck us. I plugged it into my laptop. No password. No folders. Just one video file. I hovered my mouse over it for what felt like an hour. Then I clicked play. The screen went black for a few seconds. Then the image flickered to life, grainy, low quality. A camera positioned high up in a corner, like it had been hidden in a vent or behind a shelf. It looked like a bedroom. Not mine, not my dad's, but familiar. The old trailer. I knew that window. I knew the crack in the ceiling tile. And then, she walked in. Mia. Barefoot. Tank top. Hair pulled back in a messy knot. She was younger, this wasn't recent. Maybe a year ago. Maybe longer. She looked around the room, then sat on the edge of the bed. Smiled. Then he walked in after her. Him. My dad. And from the second he touched her, the way she tilted her head, the way she reached for him, I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't grief or boredom or a moment of weakness. This was rehearsed. Familiar. They'd done this before. More times than I wanted to imagine. I slammed the laptop shut before the video finished. My breath caught in my throat. My fingers felt numb. My whole body went cold. I staggered away from the counter and sat down on the kitchen floor. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just sat there, back against the fridge, shaking. He'd filmed it. He'd filmed it. And kept it. And gave it to me. I don't know what sick logic that was. Some twisted attempt at honesty? Revenge? One last swing at my ribs while I was already bleeding out? Whatever it was, it worked. I felt hollow. Not angry. Not betrayed. Just erased. Like I'd never existed in either of their lives as anything but a footnote. A stepping stone. A punchline to a joke they never planned on explaining. The worst part? I wasn't surprised. That's when it hit me. Really hit me how deep the damage went. That I could see something like that, feel something like that, and not be shocked. That level of numbness doesn't come from nowhere. It's built, layer by layer, year by year. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't move. Just sat there, staring at the black screen of my laptop like it might light up again and tell me something I missed. Something to undo it all. But it never did. Around 5 a.m., I picked up the flash drive, walked outside barefoot, and buried it in the dirt behind the shed. No ceremony. No goodbye. Just dirt over plastic. Like a grave. I didn't want to remember it. But I didn't want to forget either. Something changed after I buried the flash drive. It wasn't peace. I wouldn't insult the word like that. But it was a pause. A strange, blank stretch of time where everything went quiet inside me. No anger. No grief. Just nothing. Like I'd been screaming so long I lost my voice, and now I was just mouthing the words. I went to work like normal. Showed up, kept my head down, did my job. Nodded when people talked to me, even smiled a couple times. I became what people like to call fine. But inside, I was an empty container. I stopped feeling like a person. And then one night, 3 weeks after the video, I saw her. Mia. At the grocery store. I was coming down the cereal aisle, trying to remember if I had coffee filters at home, when I looked up and there she was, standing at the end of the row, wearing sweatpants and a hoodie like she hadn't slept well in days, hair tucked into a beanie, earbuds in, looking down at something on her phone. I froze. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. She didn't see me, didn't even glance up, just grabbed a box of something and turned the corner like it was the most normal day in the world. But I stood there for another minute, maybe 2, heart pounding in my ears like I just run 5 blocks. Not because I missed her. I didn't. Not anymore. But because seeing her like that, calm, unbothered, free, made something sour twist in my gut. She'd moved on. That fast. That easy. Like I'd been nothing more than a detour. I didn't go up to her. I didn't say a word. But I followed her. Not on purpose. At least not at first. I told myself it was coincidence. That we just kept ending up in the same aisles. That I wasn't looking for some kind of proof. But then she walked outside. And got into a car I didn't recognize. Someone was driving. A guy. Mid-30s maybe. Clean cut. Tapping the steering wheel while she laughed and showed him something on her phone. They pulled away. And I stood there in the parking lot, holding a half-empty basket of things I didn't need, watching her disappear. Again. Like she hadn't already done it 100 times before. I went home and sat in the driveway for an hour with the engine running. I kept thinking, what's left? She's moved on. My dad's vanished again. My family doesn't talk to me. Rupert sends the occasional check-in text, but I don't answer anymore. Not because I don't care, but because I don't know how to be the person he thinks I am. That night I opened a beer, then another, then for more. And somewhere in that haze I started packing. Not because I had a plan, but because I couldn't stay in that house one more night. Not with the memories crawling up the walls. Not with that backyard full of old ghosts and buried truths. By morning, I had 2 duffel bags and no destination. I got in the truck, tossed the bags in the back, and drove. No GPS, no route, no goodbye. I just picked a direction and let the highway swallow me. Somewhere around state lines, I stopped at a rest area and stared at myself in the mirror over the sink. I looked blank. No rage, no sorrow, just a face. Just a guy who used to be something. And then I saw it, scrawled on the mirror, like someone had written it with their fingertip and let the condensation bring it back to life. 5 words. Familiar. Haunting. She smiled for me too. I backed away from the mirror so fast I knocked over the trash can. My heart slammed against my ribs. There was no one else in the bathroom. No wet breath on the glass. No footprints on the tile. But that phrase, followed me across 100 miles like a stain on the inside of my skull. It wasn't over. He wasn't done. I kept driving. Didn't even bother wiping the words off the mirror. Just threw the truck into gear and peeled out of that rest stop like the pavement was on fire. My brain felt wired, like someone had jammed static into every corner of it. That sentence. She smiled for me too. It looped over and over, louder each time, like a sick little mantra I couldn't shake. By sundown, I'd crossed another state line. I didn't plan to stop, but I needed gas, and my hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the pump. I found a rundown motel off a 2-lane road surrounded by nothing but flat land and silence. Neon sign half buzzing. A single pickup in the lot. It was the kind of place people go to disappear. That's probably why I picked it. I walked into the front office and the guy behind the counter didn't even look up. Just slid a form across the counter and said, "Cash only." I paid. Took the key. Room 6. The door creaked open like it was holding its breath. Thin carpet. Cigarette burns on the comforter. Yellow light that made everything look jaundiced. Perfect. I dropped my bags. Sat on the edge of the bed. The air smelled like mildew and stale bleach. I couldn't tell if the buzzing in my ears was from the fluorescent light or the inside of my skull. That's when I noticed it. A small white envelope. Sitting neatly on the nightstand, like a mint on a hotel pillow. No name, just taped shut. I stood up so fast the bed creaked behind me. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. Hadn't used my phone since the rest stop. Hadn't checked into the motel under my name. This place didn't even have Wi-Fi. There was no way he could have tracked me, right? I stared at the envelope for a long time. Long enough for doubt to turn into dread. Eventually, I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. No greeting. No sign-off. Just the words. You keep running from places like they're the problem. But the problem's always been you. That was it. No name. No threat. Just that one sentence sharp enough to cut skin. I laughed. Out loud. One of those dry, cracked laughs that feels like it comes from somewhere outside your body. Because it was so him. So smug. So rehearsed. A phrase meant to crawl into your bones and rot from the inside out. But what shook me more than the note was the fact that I wasn't surprised. I sat down on the bed, still holding the paper. My hands were trembling again, and I looked around that room. The chipped dresser, the water-stained ceiling, the single lamp with no bulb, and I realized I'd stayed in rooms just like this before. Not this exact one. Not this exact state. But this. Different walls. Same emptiness. He was right about one thing. I did run. When things got too loud. Too real. When guilt or grief or shame caught up to me, I put it in a box, threw it in the trunk, and drove until I couldn't hear it anymore. But this was different. This time the past packed its own bags and came with me. And it wasn't just him anymore. It was her. It was me. It was the whole chain of rot that started long before I knew how to spell the word trust. I didn't sleep that night. Again. Just laid there staring at the ceiling. one hand on the nightstand, fingers still grazing the corner of that note, like I needed to feel it to believe it was real. I didn't know it yet, but the next morning, I'd find something outside my door, something that would prove, without a doubt, that he was always one step ahead. The knock came just after sunrise. Soft, measured, almost polite. 3 quick taps on the motel door. I was already awake, hadn't even closed my eyes. My clothes still on from the night before, breath stale, heartbeat slow and dull like it had given up trying to warn me. I didn't move right away. Waited, listened. Silence. Then I stood, crossed the threadbare carpet, and peered through the eye-hole. No one. But something was there. I opened the door slowly. A box. Small. Plain. No writing. I crouched, heart climbing back into my throat. Picked it up carefully, like it might buzz or bleed or scream. Took it inside. Set it on the table beneath the flickering motel lamp. The tape wasn't even sealed. It peeled off like it had been placed there deliberately loose, like it wanted to be opened. Inside was a photograph. Just one. But this time, it wasn't of me, or Mia, or him. It was a boy, maybe 10 years old, sitting on the edge of a wooden dock, bare feet dangling over the water, fishing rod in hand. A grin spread across his face like he hadn't learned the weight of secrets yet. I knew that face. It was me, before the chaos, before the guilt, before the girlfriend, the lies, the slow dismantling of everything I thought made up my life. I held the photo like it might melt in my hands, because I remembered that day. I remembered who took that photo. It was my mom, back when she was still around, before she checked out, not physically but emotionally, before I became someone she couldn't look at without blinking too much. That picture had been missing for years. I thought I lost it when I moved the first time, never thought I'd see it again. And now he had it. Somehow, my dad had gone so far back into my life that he was pulling things from before him. Before the twisted timelines. Before the shame. He wasn't just messing with my head now. He was rebuilding the whole thing. Resurfacing pieces I didn't even know were still part of me. And on the back of the photo, in that same crooked, scratchy handwriting, "You smiled for her too." That's when it hit me. This wasn't random. None of it. He wasn't just trying to haunt me, he was trying to rewrite me, bit by bit, memory by memory, until I couldn't tell which parts of my life were mine and which were his fingerprints pressed into the cracks. The flash drive, the motel note, the photo, each one reaching further back. He was peeling me like a fruit, layer by layer, until nothing was left but the pit. I didn't even realize I was crying until I saw the drops hit the table. Quiet, hot streaks down my cheeks. I didn't sob, didn't wail, just stared at that photo like it might start speaking. And in a way, it already had. I packed my things in silence, left the motel without checking out. No destination, just the road again. But this time I had a new question burning through my chest. How much of my story was ever really mine? 2 days later, I ended up in the town where I was born. Not on purpose. The truck needed gas, I was hungry, and when I pulled off the highway, there it was, the exit sign I hadn't seen in over a decade. A name I tried to forget. I sat there at the stoplight for maybe a full minute, hands gripping the wheel, stomach twisted. I should have turned left, gotten back on the interstate. But I didn't. I turned right, drove past the old middle school, now boarded up, past the laundromat where I'd once gotten into a screaming match with my mom about a ruined jacket, past the crumbling movie theater where I saw my first horror flick and pretended I wasn't scared. The memories didn't come back like a flood. They came in fragments, like broken glass scattered across pavement. And somehow I ended up parked outside my childhood home. It was still there. The siding had been replaced, the shutters painted blue. But the porch, that crooked step, the crack in the third board, the wind chimes that used to keep me up at night, that was still the same. I don't even remember getting out of the truck. I just remember standing on the sidewalk, staring. And then the door opened. A woman stepped out. Mid-40s maybe, holding a trash bag and squinting at me like she couldn't decide if I was lost or dangerous. "You okay?" she called out. I nodded slowly. "Yeah. Sorry. Just used to live here." She paused, looked me over, then softened. "You want to come see it?" The question caught me off guard. I hesitated, then nodded. She let me in. The inside was different, new paint, different furniture, no trace of the wallpaper with the faded sunflowers in the kitchen. But the bones were the same. The creak in the hallway near the bathroom. The way the living room slanted just slightly to the left. The scratch in the windowsill where I carved my initials when I was 9. We didn't talk much. She let me walk through it in silence. And when I got to my old room, I stopped in the doorway. She looked at me from behind and said, "That's my daughter's room now. But it used to be pink, didn't it? Before we moved in." I swallowed. "Yeah, pink. For about a week." She smiled, a little confused, then walked off to give me space. I stepped inside. Looked around. The closet. The corner where my bed used to be. The spot under the window where I hid old notebooks full of drawings. And then I knelt down, instinct more than thought, and ran my hand along the baseboard. It was still there. That tiny crack in the panel barely visible. I pulled it gently and it popped loose. Behind it, in the shallow gap between the studs, was a shoebox. Still there. After all these years. I pulled it out slowly, hands trembling, heart thudding like it knew something was waiting inside. Inside the box. A broken keychain shaped like a wolf. A friendship bracelet I made with Rupert in 6th grade. A photo of me and Mom on Halloween, both dressed as skeletons. And at the bottom, a folded sheet of lined paper. I opened it carefully. It was a letter. From my mom. Dated 2 weeks before she left. "If you ever find this, it means I didn't get to say goodbye. But it also means you were smart enough to remember where we hide the important things. There are things I wish I could tell you. About me. About your dad. About the life I tried to build and why it didn't work. But mostly, I just want you to know one thing. None of it was your fault. Not then. Not ever. You were more than the chaos around you. And one day, I hope you see it." I couldn't breathe. I just sat there, in a stranger's house, holding a piece of paper written by a woman I hadn't heard from in 15 years and for the first time in what felt like forever. I felt something that wasn't hollow. It didn't fix anything. Didn't undo the damage. But it punctured the numbness. It was late afternoon when I left the house. The sun was low, bleeding orange through the trees as I stepped off the porch and back onto the sidewalk, that letter still folded in my back pocket, pressed so close to my skin it felt like a second spine. I didn't say much to the woman who lived there now, just nodded and said thank you with a voice that barely worked. My head was buzzing, but not with panic. Not the usual static. This was different. It felt like I'd cracked open a sealed room in my chest, one I'd boarded up so long ago I forgot what it meant to feel anything in there. I climbed into the truck, started the engine, and just sat with it running. Breathing. Letting the moment stretch. Then I looked in the side mirror. And my blood froze. A silver SUV. 3 houses down. Parked on the opposite curb. No headlights. No movement. Just there. My throat tightened. I waited. Counted to 10. Then 20. It didn't move. I rolled down my window and leaned out, trying to get a better look at the windshield. Couldn't see anyone. It was tinted. But I knew. He'd followed me. He hadn't just planted the motel box. He hadn't just left the note or mailed the photograph. He tracked me all the way back to the origin. The source. The question wasn't how. Not anymore. It was why. Why this moment? Why now? Why follow me all the way here, to the one place I'd never planned to return? I threw the truck into drive and pulled out fast, the tires spitting gravel behind me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Because if I saw that SUV move, if I saw it trail me again, I think I would have snapped. I drove straight out of town. Didn't stop until I hit the first rest stop past the state line. Pulled over. Killed the engine. Sat in the dark. And waited. No headlights behind me. No one pulling in. Just the night. And silence. And then my phone lit up. Blocked number. No ringtone, just a voicemail notification. My chest tightened. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then I pressed play. His voice. Low. Calm. Like he was reading bedtime stories again, back before things got sharp and ugly. "You're doing a lot of digging lately. Funny what comes up when you scratch too deep." Pause. Then the last words, barely a whisper. "Be careful what you remember." Click. That was it. No threats. No answers. Just that warning. Be careful what you remember. But the thing is, that was the one thing I hadn't been able to do. Forget. The next morning, I woke up in the truck. Neck stiff. Mouth dry. Windshield fogged from my breath. I had no idea what time I'd fallen asleep, sometime after the voicemail, I guess. I didn't dream. My mind was too worn down to even try. Just a blank, cold sleep, like someone hit pause on my life. I sat up, cracked the window, and lit a cigarette without thinking, then stopped halfway and snapped it in half. Old habit. Old ghosts. Not this time. I started driving again. No map, no destination. Just forward. By late afternoon, I was back in my hometown. I didn't mean to be. I tried to avoid it for years, but my hands took the wheel like they knew something I didn't. And that's when I made a decision. If he wanted to follow me, haunt me, poison every inch of my memory, fine. But I was going to finish it. I was going to look him in the eye. So I drove to the last place I knew he might be. Not the trailer he'd left that behind months ago. I mean the real place. The one where everything started. My grandfather's old cabin. Deep in the woods, down 2 miles of dirt road, past the hunting blinds and the rusted fence no one ever fixed. He used to take me there when I was a kid. Said it was the only place he could hear himself think. My dad inherited it after Grandpa passed. Last I heard, he kept it for emergencies. And this sure as hell felt like one. When I pulled up, the driveway was empty. No SUV. But the front door was open. Wide open. Like he was waiting. I got out slowly, every nerve in my body pulsing. The wind whispered through the trees, and I could hear the old wind chime hanging from the porch, a single, hollow clink every few seconds. I stepped inside. The air smelled like dust and pine and something faintly metallic. The fireplace was cold. The windows streaked with dirt. But someone had been here recently. There were beer cans on the counter. A flannel jacket draped over the back of a chair. And sitting in the middle of the kitchen table like it belonged there was a thick black notebook. My name was written on the cover in all caps. Not typed. Not labeled. Carved. With a knife. I picked it up. Hands shaking. I flipped it open. Page 1, a date. The day Mia and I met. Page 2, a list. My old addresses. Phone numbers. Work history. Page 3. Photos. Hundreds of them. Some printed. Some Polaroids. Some I'd never seen before, grainy, distant shots of me walking down the street, standing at the gas station, pulling into my driveway at night. All taken from far away. All taken when I thought I was alone. My stomach turned. This wasn't obsession. This wasn't a grudge. This was surveillance. He'd been building it like a case file. Every argument I had with Mia. Every time I moved out. Every time I came back. Every relapse. Every late-night text to my brother. Every mistake, every spiral, every moment I wanted to bury. It was all there. Written in his handwriting. Margins filled with notes. Thoughts. Theories. And then, in the very back of the notebook, tucked between the last pages, folded like a secret. A photo of Mia. Smiling. Not at me. Not at the camera. At him. Her hand was resting on his chest. His arm was around her waist. Her head tilted just enough to say comfort, not confusion. She looked safe. She looked like she belonged there. And that broke something in me I didn't know was still left to break. I stood in the cabin, clutching that notebook, and for the first time I realized he hadn't just ruined my past. He'd rewritten it. I didn't leave the cabin. Not right away. I sat there in that creaking wooden chair, notebook open on the table, and tried to breathe. Tried to think. But my brain was buzzing like an exposed wire. The photo of Mia still stared back at me. I couldn't look at it anymore, so I shoved it face down under the notebook. But the image had already stamped itself into my memory, burned behind my eyes like an afterimage. That smile, her eyes, the quiet ease in her body, like she chose it. I'd been spiraling for months trying to understand what happened. But now I saw it for what it really was. It wasn't about one betrayal. It was about control. He wanted to own every version of me. The past, the present, the memory, the pain. Every broken piece. And now I had proof, the file he'd built, the photos he'd taken, the messages I didn't know he'd intercepted, the calculated collapse of my life. Every page in that notebook was a blueprint. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what I found taped to the back cover. A small USB. Not labeled. Just stuck there with a strip of old duct tape and one word scribbled beneath it in red Sharpie. Finish. I almost threw it in the fire. Almost. But I didn't. Because I had to know. So I drove back to town, to a library where no one knew me, no one watched, no one whispered. Found a quiet corner, plugged the USB into the public computer, and waited. One folder. Timestamped for that morning. Inside, one video. Again, no name. No title. Just numbers. I clicked it. The screen lit up. And I saw me. Sitting in the cabin. Reading the notebook. Just minutes before. I blinked, stunned. It was footage from inside the cabin, the exact moment I found the photos. My own face, frozen in confusion, anger, shock. The angle was from above. I looked up at the ceiling of the library. Then I ran. Out the doors. Into the parking lot. I threw up behind the truck, hands shaking so bad I couldn't hold onto the door handle. He'd recorded me. That morning. In the cabin. He was still watching. Somewhere, maybe just out of sight. Maybe parked 2 lots away. Maybe across the road with binoculars and a satisfied smile. He'd been there. He was always there. I wasn't a person to him. I was a project. And now he'd left one final puzzle. A perfect little loop. Watch me discover my own destruction, then walk away. Unless I broke the loop. So I drove back. To the cabin. With one plan. No speech. No confrontation. No begging for answers. I wasn't looking for closure anymore. I was done playing his game. When I got there, the door was still open. Same chill in the air. Same notebook on the table. But something was different. A cup on the counter. Steam rising. He was there. I didn't say a word. I walked through that door and into the kitchen, and there he was. Sitting like he was waiting for me. Like he knew I'd come back. Thought you might show, he said. I didn't sit. He didn't offer. There was silence between us, thick, electric, waiting. He finally looked up. You saw it. I nodded. My throat was dry. He smiled. That same calm, almost fatherly expression. The one he wore when he used to teach me how to change a tire. Or clean a fish. Or bury the truth. I looked him in the eye. And said the only thing I'd come there to say. It ends now. He stared back, unblinking. You sure about that? I walked to the fireplace. Picked up the notebook. And threw it in. No speeches. No drama. No permission. Just fire. The pages curled fast, black smoke rising. I watched it crackle, spit, collapse into itself like all the lies were exhaling one last time. He didn't move. Didn't try to stop me. Didn't even blink. When the flames died down, I turned back to him. I'm not carrying you anymore, I said. He tilted his head. You never were. But I was already walking out the door. And this time? I didn't look back. Not even once. Because the truth is monsters don't always hide in the dark. Sometimes they stand in your kitchen. Wear your last name. Smile like they love you. And if you're not careful, you start to smile back.